Hi everyone, good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you. More than anything in the world, Donnie loved himself and his status as heir to a large corporation. Even as a high school student, the young man knew perfectly well what fate had in store for him. A secure, luxurious life of a millionaire and a prestigious position at his father's right hand. Therefore, Donnie divided people into those who were worthy to be near him and those who were not so lucky in life, and they had no right to be around the rich boy. Only one man Donnie let close to him and considered almost his equal. It was Tommy, the son of the head of a company whose annual income was markedly less than Donnie's father's huge corporation, and that almost still made Tommy a step below, and so he became something of a pet to Donnie, allowed to come into Donnie's house and even sleep over. It is not known how Tommy himself felt about this state of affairs, for he was a cheerful and cunning man. He was well aware that Donnie was to him a sort of badge of quality, or even a pass to an even more luxurious life. Donnie and Tommy had a common weakness. They loved expensive, beautiful things. And the guys didn't care if it was a sports car, a suit from a famous couturier, jewelry, or girls. The main thing was that the thing was exclusive and special, and therefore, whatever new and luxurious thing appeared on the horizon, Donnie and Tommy considered it their duty to see and buy it first. Even their girlfriends they chose like expensive horses, only the most beautiful, graceful, and dazzlingly luxurious. So the two friends never missed an event where they could meet beautiful girls. Another fashion show was in full swing. Models in expensive clothes floated down the catwalk, expressing their superiority to the down-to-earth people greedily devouring them with their eyes. And there was indeed something to see. The girls were of extraordinary beauty and grace, as if carved from stone statuettes of great masters. They were perfect. Donnie and Tommy looked at the models with fascination, pointing their fingers at one or the other. "That's the kind of wife I want," said Donnie, pointing to the next beauty floating by on high heels in a lace negligee, as if he were talking about some expensive thing. "Yeah, those things cost a lot of money," Tommy countered. "It's easier to buy another gelding. You'd invest money in a girl like that, and she'd find someone more expensive, a bald daddy with a big belly who'd blow the dust off her. And the older he is, the better for the beauty. Soon he will become a rich heiress, and she will choose handsome men for herself, which frankly you and I are not. But what do you need? Why do you call them things?" Donnie wondered as he continued to look at the girls on the catwalk. "Because they're all dolls in disguise. Look at their eyes, all empty and megalomaniacal. What's there to talk about with a pretty girl like that? Except rags and expensive trinkets. Do you think they want you? She wants your money? Well, with that kind of reasoning, you'll never get married, friend Horace." Donnie laughed. "And anyway, I will look for a beautiful and smart girl. Not all models are stupid and greedy at once. You need to think better of people." And Donnie threw a rose at the feet of a passing model. Well, good luck, romantic," Tommy sneered. "Watch your angel wings don't fall off in the heat of your foolish love." Donnie did not reply to his comrade's comment, but began to consider the girl he liked. The desire to marry a clever model had become a fixed idea in his mind. Donnie, like his friend, was the kind of young man who is said to have been born with a silver spoon in his mouth, or to put it another way, the golden youth. They were nothing special in themselves, had not secured grants like other talented young millionaires, and were not the heroes of our time who had succeeded in life by making discoveries or inventions. All their good fortune lay in the fact that they were born to the powerful and therefore were automatically considered just as rich. The next day the two friends met, as usual, at an expensive restaurant, ordering Caesar, Carpaccio, and a bottle of Beaujolais, and they began to discuss the previous evening. As it turned out, Donnie still hadn't given up on his dream of a beautiful and intelligent wife who would be the centerpiece of his life and, of course, of his new country house, which was more like a hotel than a house. Donnie, you're really something. Pick a bride out of the ones you've been chasing since high school, or out of the 2 rich girls your parents give you. Tommy was surprised by his friend's stubbornness. It's not the 90s marrying models. I don't want those bogeymen my parents give me, as you say. I want a beautiful woman, like in a fairy tale. Which fairy tale? Beauty and the Beast, Tommy laughed. You're the monster, Donnie snapped. Then the comrades sat in silence. But not 5 minutes later, they were served an aperitif. The young waitress carefully, gracefully placed glasses on the table and fluttered out like a butterfly. What's not your wife? Pretty smart, since she didn't forget the order. Tommy teased. Donnie didn't answer him, silently sipping his wine. You'd better advise me on what to do. The groom frowned. I can laugh too. What is there to think about? Where do we have beauties? That's right, a modeling agency. That's where you ride your white horse, Prince. Tommy wouldn't let up just for laughs, clucking his tongue like a hoof stomp. Donnie, at last, could not stand it and laughed. He couldn't hold a grudge against Tommy, the joker and the merry man. You know, Donnie, when they see you in a white Mercedes and expensive clothes, they start stacking up all the way to the ceiling. It's gonna take a long time to sort through this mess. Everywhere you look, everywhere the ladies are mercenary. And how do you know which one of them is smart and will only look at your watch and calculate how much your clothes and what brand it is? That's all their brains. There's no way one of them wasn't a gold digger. Donnie got upset. You go check it out? Tommy patted his friend on the shoulder. But don't complain about wasting your time. When Donnie returned home, he thought long and hard about his friend's words. Did all girls really only want money from men? What about love, sympathy? It can't be that modern mores have fallen so low that all beauties walk around without a soul or love in their hearts. And then how do the poor marry? No, that's all Tommy made up. If he was to be believed, then only a select few would have families, and children would be a gimmick. That way there would be no population growth. Donnie thought about it and came up with something interesting. Soon he found a way out of the situation. Donnie decided to disguise himself as an underground hobo so no one would think he was a multimillionaire, but to present himself as a free artist, of which there have been many lately. As Donnie's father used to say, whatever you do it without working. For the first time in his life, the boy went to a regular clothing store and bought a cheap jacket, simple jeans, a t-shirt and sneakers on sale, took off his expensive watch, replaced it with a colored bracelet. Donnie decided to walk without socks, so the image was more believable. Now he had to find out where all the city's hotties were concentrated. It turned out that this place was the Milan Modeling Agency, which that evening held a fashion show of spring, summer novelties from famous couturiers. That's what the groom. To be needed. Excited about the opportunity, Donnie dressed in his plain clothes, which he further transformed, dusted off his jacket and jeans in the road dust, and then gave it a good pat down. It turned out to be original, to say the least. And here he was already standing at the entrance to the modeling agency, which was illuminated by the soft light of fancy lanterns. A huge security guard, who also acted as a bouncer, incredulously looked in the direction of the incoming tramp, but let him pass, since the entrance to the fashion show party was free. In fact, it was just that no one suggested that the fashion show might be interested in the hobo. That's it, Donnie thought. The show had started. Now, let's see what happens. Maybe some beautiful and kind girl will pay attention to a poor, talented artist. A tramp and the disguised millionaire began his game. He purposely came as close as possible to the models, who were huddled together in a stand and discussing their outfits impetuously. The show was exactly half an hour away. Donnie walked around the girls, brought them water in glasses, and the models took the treats, squeamishly looking at the poor man and turning away, trying not to notice this strange guy. When Donnie took a tray of tartlets from the waiter and carried it to the pretty girls, one red-headed girl said, "Get out of here, you hobo, and take your breadcrumbs with you." She kicked Donnie under the arm so that all the food scattered on the floor. The hotties laughed and started pointing fingers at the hobo. The guard made Donnie pick up the scattered snacks, standing over him like a warden, and not a single pretty girl sympathized with the hapless and poorly dressed guy. They all laughed and even kicked the tartlets like balls to make it harder for Donnie to pick them up. This was the most humiliating experience the boy had ever had in his life. He suddenly realized, kneeling on the glossy floor, that a girl's outer beauty was not everything. A person should also be beautiful on the inside, and these so-called top models were disgusting, ugly inside, and this ugliness made Donnie sick, and there was no limit to his indignation. "I'll walk out of here and be me again, and you'll still be pretty meat for these events," clearly and loudly said the guy to the crowd of models. "You cry falsely that everyone only wants to use you, but you're no different from those you accuse of lust. Only money you want luxury, so you deserve to be treated that way." Donnie turned away from the outraged models and continued his work. Suddenly, someone's small hands nearby began to pick up the scattered tartlets too and put them in the trash. The boy looked around. He was being helped by a pretty girl with a gorgeous russet plate that was so long it touched the floor. No one had ever seen such a marvel. He was used to everyone he knew having dyed hair that was always fancifully styled by expensive stylists. Now, an ordinary girl was squatting in front of him, deftly picking up the last crumbs from the floor. Some strands had broken out of her braids and were piling themselves into curls. This sweet naturalness pleased Donnie, and his anger somehow vanished on its own. "Thank you for your help." The boy thanked his volunteer helper. "It was a lot faster with you." "You're welcome," the stranger replied, brushing the curl off her face. "That's actually my job. I work here as a cleaner, and they call me the cleaning manager." The girl laughed, revealing little dimples on her cheeks. Donnie thought he'd known her for a long time. Her naturalness, kindness, and thought he'd known her for a long time. Her naturalness, inner beauty were appealing. Besides, the girl was quite pretty, and not as unnecessarily thin and tall as the models present, who now seemed to Donnie like soulless mannequins. "What's your name?" The millionaire was curious to know more about his assistant. "Ashley," she said. Her cheeks lit up pink. "Wow," thought Donnie. Somebody else in this world can blush. Strangely enough, this blushing girl with disheveled hair and looking funny in her women's work overalls with thick straps really appealed to a well-do guy who was used to girls who were well-groomed guy who was used to girls who were well-groomed to the nail tips. Ashley was drawn to him with her radiant smile and radiant eyes because she wasn't fake. But then his thoughts were interrupted by the rough hand of the guard who had already been accosted by the models. He grabbed Donnie by the scruff of the neck and dragged him toward the exit like a naughty puppy. This guard used to work as a debt collector and knew how to beat debts out of people, so Donnie had no chance of getting out of his tenacious and muscular hands. "Let him go. How can you? It wasn't his fault. It was the girls who provoked him and pushed him." So he said what he thought of them. The cleaning lady ran after the guard and told him not to hit Donnie. Compared to that bully, the boy seemed frail. "All right, Liv," said Boogie Donnie, and let go of his jacket. "Ashley's a good girl. You should thank her." "Thank you, Jason," Ashley said quietly, and the guard left. The girl helped Donnie straighten his jacket and handed over the phone that had fallen out of his pocket. "Mama?" A little boy about 5 years old, a curly and handsome boy, was running toward Ashley. "Matthew, I told you to stay in my room. There are uncles walking around, and you're getting in the way." Ashley was angry at the little boy, but he suddenly stood upright and stared at his mother's companion. "He's my son," Ashley said in answer to Donnie's dumb question. "I don't have anyone to leave him with at night, so I take him to work with me as long as the owners allow it. He's not a problem. He's a good boy. Just a little clumsy and a little naughty, isn't he, Matthew? Where's his daddy? Donnie asked with interest in his voice. He doesn't have a father and never has. He's just my son. Abruptly, Ashley replied, and Donnie realized that the subject was closed. Ashley and Matthew walked the boy to the exit, and he found himself outside. It was a warm evening, but Donnie didn't feel like going home. And only 5 minutes later, he remembered that he hadn't taken Ashley's phone number, and he didn't want to go into that serpentarium again. Donnie wasn't about to lose a woman like that, so he decided to play his poor man's role to the end. He would have time to say that he was the richest man the world had ever seen. So after paying a lot of money for a delicious dinner, surprising the waiter to the extreme, the imbalance of appearance and the presence of considerable money, Donnie settled on the terrace of the restaurant, which was next to the emergency exit of the modeling agency, and began to wait for his new acquaintance. An hour later, Ashley and her son left Milan and headed toward the bus stop. The boy was bouncing along, holding an old teddy bear, and the young mother was trying unsuccessfully to hold her son's hand. Donnie came out to meet them and waved. "It's that uncle," the little boy shouted loudly and ran toward Donnie. The little boy looked at him trustingly and smiled. "Look, it's Mommy's bear. He has buttons instead of eyes. My mom used to play with him when she was little, and now I'm his friend." And the baby handed Donnie the most precious thing he had, a teddy bear with blue pearl buttons instead of eyes. "What's your name?" Donnie asked the baby and took the toy in his hands. "What an old bear you have." "My name is Matthew, and the bear's name is Mishka," the boy answered. "Well, I'm Donnie. Let's meet." And the young man held out his palm to the baby. Matthew cheerfully raised his little hand for a handshake. The little man was content to say hello to Donnie as if he were big. Donnie remembered to shake the bear's paw as well. "Where are you going?" he asked Ashley. "Let's go to the bus stop, Matthew. It's past our bedtime." "It's late," she answered. "Let me walk you out." Donnie didn't wait for an answer, so he walked beside them. Ashley agreed. The three of them walked. It wasn't far to the bus stop, but Donnie wanted to be with them longer anyway. He wanted to drive Ashley and Matthew himself, in the comfort of his own car, but he was afraid of frightening her with the instant transformation of a penniless artist into a millionaire. So he kept playing. "How come it's just the two of you?" directly asked the boy. "The story is as old as the world. My boyfriend left me as soon as he found out that I was pregnant and went abroad, or rather ran away without concealment," she answered. "And I myself am from an orphanage, so there is no one to help me. So we live alone with our son in this world. In the daytime, he's in kindergarten, and I'm at work. I work as a secretary in a firm, so it's easier. And in the evening, I pick him up, and we come here to clean up the agency. It's true that he is restless, but as long as the owner of the agency tolerates us." Donnie wondered. He had never known what poverty was, but today he was faced with reality, and he didn't like it. "Yeah, Dad. Thank you for giving me all the possibilities of this world," Donnie thought to himself. "How lucky for me," and he looked pityingly at the little boy cuddling with his mother's old toy. It started to rain, and Matthew whimpered. He was worried that his teddy friend named Bear would get wet and get sick, and then Donnie spit all his worries and called a cab for Ashley and the baby. She protested, saying it was too expensive. But the guy pushed the couple into a pull-up car, said they'd see each other again, paid in advance, and told the cabbie to drive carefully. Donnie's plan had succeeded. Now he knew the address of the woman he liked and the most adorable little boy in the world, the owner of an old teddy bear. When Donnie returned home, he found Tommy's car at the front door of his mansion. The housekeeper let him in, knowing full well that he was a close friend of the owner of the house. What was his guest's surprise when Donnie entered the living room in his rags? "What kind of masquerade is this?" Tommy asked with a laugh. "Did you rob a thrift store? Or were the bums having a fashion show?" The loud laughter caught the attention of the elderly housekeeper, who came into the room with a cup of coffee for a guest. When she saw Donnie in such attire, the woman's silver tray fell out of her hands in surprise, and the handmade Chinese porcelain cup fell and shattered. With a lament and an apology, she went off to get a brush and a dustpan. He was getting on my grandmother's nerves. Tommy couldn't stop laughing. He even had tears coming out of his eyes with laughter. "Don't let your mother see you like that, or you might end up an orphan." "You're really something," Donnie frowned. The thought flashed through his mind that not long ago he would have laughed at someone else like that. But now, for some reason, he wasn't laughing. "Shut up. Why are you cackling like a goose?" Donnie's got a temper. "It's my image. I pretended to be poor on purpose, not to be liked for money, but for myself. You know? But where are you? How was it?" "Did any of the models take the bait?" an intrigued friend inquired. "That's the thing, no. The only one who took pity on me was the cleaning lady, who turned out to be pretty, kind, and also smart, since she survives without the help of different daddies, and also raises a young son alone. You know, what a funny little boy. He's got it all figured out." "The cleaning ladies are already picking on him? Are you out of your mind? You're the heir to a multi-million-dollar fortune, the pride of entrepreneurship and business. What are you talking about? What cleaning lady, Donnie? Nobody picked me up. If anything, I asked for friendship. You know, something clicked in my heart, maybe my conscience and that boy, so direct and trusting. It took my breath away, and Ashley's really nice. She's working 2 jobs at once like a squirrel in a wheel. I admire people like that. And it doesn't matter that she's poor and grew up in an orphanage. I have enough money for 3 people. What's the matter with you?" Rounded Tommy's eyes. "Got a crush on the cleaning lady?" "Oh, come on, bro. You didn't drink anything in there, did you? Maybe they slipped you a love potion?" "I don't know if it's love or sympathy or both. But I want to see her again," Donnie said dreamily. "You know, I just want to be there for her, to be a support, a protector, because she's so fragile and so strong at the same time." "Did you confess to being shamelessly rich?" asked the surprised friend. Tommy could not believe that his fastidious companion could fall in love so quickly, and not at all with the girl he had always dreamed of. "No. I'm afraid Ashley will misunderstand and think I've been making fun of her." Donnie got upset. "Well, keep your mouth shut." And Tommy promised his friend to keep his secret. "I hope it goes away soon. It is true what they say, there is no friendship in love." Donnie had no idea that his longtime friend could be jealous of him. At first, Tommy was jealous that Donnie was a better student than he was, and Tommy's parents constantly set an example for Donnie. Teachers also appreciated his brilliant mind, sending the boy to various subject competitions. This infuriated Tommy a lot, but he tolerated it and tried not to show his envy to his friend. No one but the boy himself knew about the existence of the hate album, where all the joint photos with his comrade were hopelessly spoiled. Donnie's face was pierced with needles or disfigured with black marker pen. Then Tommy made some unpleasant discoveries. It turned out that Donnie's father was many times richer than his own father, whom Tommy thought was almost the ruler of the world. But the harsh reality was hurting Tommy's youthful head with its truth, and he not only became jealous of Donnie, but also slightly disliked him. Who loves the object of envy? Now that Donnie had found his love, the worm had completely eaten away at the poor guy, undermining his and Donnie's friendship. And Tommy thought of how to make, as if by chance to spoil the rich man in love, for whom the whole world was at his feet, and now love itself had turned its beautiful face to him. The opportunity to avenge someone else's happiness came the very next day. Tommy met Paul Hudson, Donnie's father, at his family restaurant. He often dropped in at lunchtime, so he always had a private table reserved just for him, away from prying eyes. "I'm glad to welcome you, Paul Hudson." Tommy fawned over Donnie's father. "How have you been? What's going on without your son today?" "Hello, Tommy." A gray-haired, lean man in a strict, expensive 3-piece suit shook the palm outstretched by the guy. "Donnie's still in the middle of business negotiations with his partners, but I came to see you." What happened? Tommy was surprised by this turn of events. My son hasn't been himself. His mother and I had noticed lately that he was distracted, like he didn't care about anything. I wonder if he's been dabbling in illegal substances or gambling big time and losing. Just tell me the truth, or I can't speak for myself. And Paul Hudson looked menacingly at his interlocutor. It's nothing like that. Tommy waved his hand. He's just recently fallen in love, that's all. Well, thank God. Who's that? Is he some kind of empty-headed model? Donnie's father asked. Take it higher. Tommy laughed evilly. To the janitor where the models hang out. I tried to talk him out of it, but he wouldn't do it. Even the boy didn't bother him. The girl's son, who, by the way, was never married. Like a janitor, Paul Hudson shouted so loudly that everyone looked around. What son? Is that his kid? Be honest. No. Calm down, that's her son. I told you she doesn't have a husband and never had one, so she's raising the baby on her own, and she's also an orphan. Tommy enjoyed watching Donnie's father suffer with this news. Finally, it was a holiday on his street, too. The news so overwhelmed the man that he forgot why he had come, confusedly looking around and thanking him for the information, which was, in fact, the most real betrayal. Donnie's father went home in a distraught mood. At the family mansion, Donnie's mother was flitting about the household now and then, giving instructions to the servants. When Paul Hudson entered the hall, his wife had already set dinner on a large white table in the dining room. She was a good hostess and knew that an evening for a spouse busy with the management of such a big business should be quiet and comfortable, and their home a quiet haven where a tired man can rest and just enjoy the silence. But this time she noticed that Paul Hudson was not himself. His face was tense, and the man himself was very nervous, and even yelled at the gardener he met on his way home for no reason. She had seen him like that only once, when their stock suddenly began to fall rapidly, but Paul Hudson and his team managed to equalize the situation, and the rich men miraculously did not go bankrupt. And now, seeing how her beloved husband holds back the anger bursting from his chest, Priscilla Hudson was not in the least afraid. "Honey, what's wrong with you? Are you in some kind of trouble?" cautiously my wife asked. "No, Priscilla. We're the ones with the problem," the man barked, shaking his gray hair. That's what a woman might think when she hears her husband say that. In the mind of a housewife who devoted her life to her family, pushing her career as an archaeologist into the darkest corner, many reasons popped up at once. One of them was the imminent divorce, and at the request of her husband. "Are you breaking up with me, Paul? You found a younger man, didn't you?" "Don't you need me now?" Priscilla Hudson said with her head slumped over her shoulders. "Of course everyone's divorced. Young women's divorced. Young women have been taken for wives, and you're the only one left with an old wife." Priscilla Hudson was shouting. "Calm down," Paul Hudson said more peacefully, realizing what was on his wife's mind. "I didn't mean it like that. I meant that you and I have problems concerning our son." "What happened? What's wrong with Donnie?" Paul Hudson's wife became even more tense. To make a long story short, he found a bride who works as a technician somewhere in a club or a modeling agency. Although it doesn't matter now, but the main thing is that she is an orphan and is raising an illegitimate son. There you go. Paul Hudson finished and sat back in his chair. Such information was even more difficult for the mother of the corporate heir to digest. She could not understand where she had made a mistake, how it happened that her little blood had tangled with the inferior world. "It can't be. He has such fine taste," doubted Priscilla Hudson. His girls were always high society, or so beautiful that they could be on the cover of a glossy magazine. "Well, if you don't believe me, ask him yourself," Donnie's father answered tiredly. "And I will ask." Immediately, Priscilla Hudson dialed her son's number and asked him to come home, for she knew that if his father had called him, Donnie might have postponed the visit, but he loved his mother very much, and so had to come as soon as he was called in a weeping voice. When Donnie entered the house, no one greeted him as usual. He found his parents in the living room. His father was standing by the fireplace, and his mother was sitting in a chair with her head bandaged and drinking drops. When she saw her son, she stood up and collapsed back down without strength. It was obvious that she was crying. "Boy, what do you think you were doing?" His father's voice boomed. "I heard some news today that makes me think I am turning even grayer. Turns out you got mixed up with some beggar girl, a back alley wench. Tommy told me all about it, so don't try to dodge it. And she's got some kid with whoever's got it. Ain't you got enough girls in your circle? Any one of them will stick to you like a leaf. Don't yell at me." Donnie answered calmly. "She's not a whore or a backstabber like you say, and her little boy is a very good boy of 5. The guy left her when he found out she was pregnant. Not everybody's as honest as you are, Dad. And that happens all the time. But the girls in our circle, that's what they are for money. You know, money can run out, so a pretty girl like that jumps to the next rich bump. I don't need that kind of hopping. Ashley doesn't know who I am or how much money I have. She thinks I'm a penniless artist. She's the one who's not interested in money and earns it herself. Yes, and me, unfortunately, also not interested, but I hope this is still. So do not drive the wave. No one has married anyone yet. I didn't raise you to give you to the first woman I met." A weeping mother entered the conversation. "You are my son, and I will not accept this maiden and her brood. You know that. She doesn't even know I like her, and you're already going to keep her out of the house." Donnie laughed. "When you have a granddaughter, you'll be the first to come babysit." And the boy ran down the stairs with a laugh, slamming the door. The mother was left sitting there with her mouth open in surprise, her hands clasped to her chest and looking at her husband in utter bewilderment. What granddaughter was he talking about? Is that woman pregnant again? I'm going out of my mind. She asked him astonishingly. The father could not find an answer. He sat and thought about what to do next. That same evening, Donnie met up with Ashley and Matthew. They were walking in the park when a cheerful guy with a huge bundle of colorful balloons hurried toward them. "Wow." The kid was amazed, and his eyes lit up with happiness. "Where did you get so many balloons? Did a clown give them to you?" "Yeah. That was quite a circus at my house today," Donnie whispered to himself and said aloud to the boy. "You guessed it. A clown named Tommy came running by and asked me to take all the balloons away from him because they were bothering him to run, so I helped him. And he told me to give little Matthew some cotton candy and a caramel apple on a stick." "Wow. Does the clown know my name and give me presents?" Matthew was thrilled. The boy was so happy and surprised at the same time that he didn't know where to start, whether to get balloons or treats first. So he asked his mom to hold the goodies and ran off to play with the pile of balloons. "You shouldn't have spent so much money," Ashley said quietly. "It's expensive. I always buy him one thing when we walk here, or a toy or goodies. But thank you so much anyway." "I'm not sorry." "Let him rejoice," answered Donnie, happy as an elephant. He had the feeling that he had just been given a huge gift. Donnie realized that Ashley was very pleased that someone was paying attention to her son, and Donnie was just now feeling the weight of life that had fallen on a single young mother. He wanted to protect them both, to take them to his house now and not let them go anywhere, but it would be rash to do so now. It was too soon to admit it, though he could see that Ashley was already looking at him with different eyes. She was attracted to him, and Donnie was glad of that. Their meetings became frequent. Ashley always came with Matthew, who became very attached to Donnie and always ran to him for a hug. It was obvious that the little boy missed his father very much. A week later, when the trio went out for a walk on the waterfront, Donnie confessed his feelings to Ashley. She, embarrassed, replied that she had actually liked the guy a long time ago, back during an incident at the model house. Donnie was happier than ever. This happiness lasted for 2 months, until a luxury black car drove into the yard where Ashley lived. The chauffeur opened the door for the important passenger, Donnie's father. The man looked around. An ordinary 5-story panel building with a run down courtyard. The rich man was clearly unimpressed, and he squeamishly entered the entryway with its shabby walls. Paul Hudson knocked on Ashley's apartment. She opened and looked at the handsome-looking gentleman in an uncomprehending way. "Sorry, I'm not buying anything," she said. "And I'm not selling anything. I came to see you, Ashley." Donnie's father answered with a stony face. "Hello, how do you know me?" She was surprised. "Come in, please. Matthew, we have guests." A boy ran into the hallway and stared at the stranger. "Hello, mister." The little boy greeted the man politely. "Come into our room, sit down. Would you like me to give you my teddy bear?" And without waiting for an answer, he shoved his old teddy bear into Paul Hudson's hand. For a minute, Father Donnie thought that there was something familiar in this situation, but he did not pay attention to it. He was worried about something else. "I'll start with the main thing. I'm Donnie's father," said the man, looking his hostess in the eye. And he didn't even bother to respond to the baby's greeting. "What do you mean?" "He told me he was an orphan." And Ashley slowly sat down in her chair. "As you can see, I am alive and well, and his mother is not poor. Have you ever heard of the Ince Corporation?" The man asked dryly. "Yes, I wanted to get a job there as a secretary, but they wouldn't take me," Ashley replied. "So this corporation is owned by our family, and Donnie is the vice president. Are you sure that's my Donnie? He's a poor street artist and rents a little apartment on the edge of town. I've been there myself." "I don't get it." Ashley clutched her head. "Of course it's not yours," countered the interlocutor. "The guy's playing at love. And that's it. Leave him alone. You're no match for Donnie. We already found him a bride from our circle. I'll give you the money and you're out of here, or you're on your own." "Cold," said Paul Hudson. "So he lied to me. But why? I don't know. Maybe I wanted, like in that movie, simple, pure love. But it doesn't work that way, you know. Money rules the world, not love. So take the money and get out." The guest said rudely, "I won't take anything from you." Ashley's tears flowed. "I'll go away. Why didn't he come himself? Maybe he got tired of you. Didn't you ever consider that? Donnie's coming back from his business trip in 3 days, so you better not be here. You hear me?" The man growled, "I get it." Ashley looked Paul Hudson straight in the eye. "Mister, go away. You're bad. You made my mother cry." The little boy pounced on Donnie's father, waving his fists, and Paul Hudson left. 3 days later, Donnie rushed to Ashley's house. He was carrying a pile of boxes of presents and decided that day to confess who he really was. To his surprise, the locks were changed. The locks were changed. The landlady where Ashley and her son lived opened the door for him. "Hello, where are Ashley and Matthew?" Donnie asked, smelling something bad. "So they moved out 2 days ago." She was still in a hurry to go somewhere, crying all the time. And the boy was crying. The woman wailed, "What happened? I don't know." Neighbors say that after some gray-haired rich man in a black car came to see her, she was not herself, borrowed money from people, and drove away in an unknown direction. "I see. I'll go." Donnie was devastated as he realized who had interfered with his destiny. His father had decided to strike preemptively after all, sending his son away on purpose. "Wait, that little boy asked me to tell you, like he knew you were coming. Here, this is for you," and the woman handed Donnie an old teddy bear with mother, of pearl button eyes. In his paws he held a note in which a child's hand had been inscribed Donnie. Such a gift turned Donnie's heart and made him so angry that only Ashley could have done something about it if he had suddenly shown up here, but he couldn't expect a miracle. Donnie had no idea where to look for his beloved. Her phone had been disconnected. Her workplace had said she'd quit, and no one had seen her. The circle was closed. Donnie hadn't been to the family mansion, in over 6 months and hadn't returned his parents' calls since. The father, after a serious conversation, never admitted his guilt and thought he was right about everything. Donnie communicated with him only for work. The mother was desperate to beg forgiveness from the only son in whose destiny they had so unceremoniously interfered. One day, Donnie met Tommy. He was walking with 2 girls who were making eyes at him. "And do you like this life?" Donnie asked. "They're only with you for the money, but they're beautiful, remember?" Tommy's former friend and not the janitorial staff? Donnie didn't answer, just punched the arrogant bull right in the face, which made him feel a little better. He walked away from Tommy, who whimpered in pain and held onto his broken nose. Then, another month later, Donnie got married by calculation. The wedding with the daughter of the head of a powerful company was a big one in the Seychelles. There were only the right people, the newlyweds like 2 robots falsely smiling at congratulations from rich people just like them. Both of them knew that they were going to live each other's lives. As the saying goes, nothing personal, just business. Donnie's company began to make more and more profits. Foreign investors wanted to work with him, and the guy's life went on between meetings and signing new contracts. One such day, his secretary came up to him and handed him a note left behind. It said that an investor who was being hunted by Donnie's competitors was asking him to meet out of town to discuss an important matter. The note also stated that the meeting was to be held in secret for Donnie's own benefit. 2 hours later, he was sitting in an old roadside cafe outside of town. The wait was long, and it didn't suit the guy. He was about to leave when a stately man of about 55 walked in. "You must be Donnie Hudson," asked the stranger with interest, looking at Donnie. That interest did not escape the young man's gaze. "Yes. And you are Jeremy Robbins. Nice to meet you. So what made you want to meet me? In secret, too. There is important information," the man said simply and smiled. "The thing is, you're my son." "Such a joke, huh?" Donnie grinned. "I've heard you're an extraordinary person, but not to this extent." "Donnie, wait. Don't rush. I can prove my point to you." He took the boy by the hand so that he would stay and listen to the end. "You can't figure it out without a bottle." The man joked and ordered a whiskey and 2 glasses. "Okay. You have 10 minutes, the guy answered briefly. "I'll make it to 5, he joked and started talking. "Your father and I started the business in the 90s, and we were friends like no other. Back then they were dividing the market. The business, in a word, we got dirty in blood. People were put to death for money. Everyone was taken over and became a competitor. It got to the point where they started sending killers to each other. But we already had families and kids almost at the same time. So Paul and I decided to settle, and to make sure no one could cheat, we exchanged kids." "What do you mean, exchanged?" Donnie was indignant. "What are we? A pile of garbage to you?" "You listen to me, calm down," his real father shouted at Donnie. "If we hadn't, one of us would have wiped out the other and his whole family, but at least we'd all be alive." Everyone was thinking about their kid who lived in someone else's family. "What about the other son?" "My father's son. Where is he now?" "Is he with you?" "No son. Paul had a girl. I gave him an heir, and he gave him an heir, and he gave me a girl. You know, it's a sin on me. I gave her to an orphanage. I couldn't raise somebody else's kid. I wish I had a son, but I didn't have a girl. My wife left me and I ran away from your father's anger. I changed my name. That's it. And then because of my illness, I couldn't have any more children. And the corporation to whom? A stranger. So I bequeathed it to you. When I die, the entire empire is yours. Jeremy Robbins, we need to find that girl, my father's daughter, Donnie said. Call me Daddy, the man asked. I'm sorry, I can't yet, the guy answered glumly. Well, the important thing is that now you know who you are, my father answered. Here's my phone number. Call me anytime. You can consider my business as yours. Donnie replied well, trying to hide the fact that this news stunned him. When the investor left, Donnie sat in the cafe for a long time, thinking, Ashley, Matthew, Tommy's bloody nose, and his real father's face, which Donnie realized looked like his own, like two peas in a pod, were suddenly in his mind. Only one person could dispel the doubts, not his own father, Paul, who had raised him and loved him. All the anger at his father vanished at once, and his mother felt sorry for him. After all, her daughter had been taken from her, and she had had to suffer in silence for so many years. Mom. Donnie walked into the family nest. My son came, and I was happy and hugged him. How long has it been since I've seen you? You've lost weight. Doesn't your wife feed you? I feed myself, and she's only my wife on paper. Where's Daddy? The mother accompanied her son to his father's office, but did not go in. Is it true I'm not your son? Donnie started off with a bang. His father looked up in exasperation. He guessed who might have betrayed the secret of the child swap. Is that bastard in town? Did he tell you that? Father asked angrily. Yes. Your daughter grew up in an orphanage. Did you know that? I made inquiries about 5 years ago and found out about it. And you didn't try to find her? What's the point? I have a son, and the girl is Kevin's concern. He's Jeremy now, but he's really Kevin. Don't tell my mother. She thinks her daughter is living in luxury somewhere abroad. I'm not crazy enough to tell my mother that yet. Where's my real mother? She died in Spain, and Kevin doesn't seem to know about it. So I'm sorry for your loss. That's all I have to say. He admits guilt and gives me his business. That's a good thing. You have to pay for your sins. He owes me a debt. Go on. Don't tell your mother. Donnie came out of the study depressed. His mother was in the dining room, rejoicing at the arrival of her beloved son. Looking at her made Donnie's heart bleed. I love you very much, Mom, Donnie said, and hugged the woman. And I to you more than life, my darling. I'm sorry about Ashley, son. I can see how you're fiddling with that dyed doll. But it's all right. I made that mistake, and I'm the one who has to fix it. But the son did not pay attention to his mother's words. He was more absorbed in his own thoughts. In the morning, while Donnie's wife was still asleep in her yard, her husband had already gotten ready for work and called the driver. After he drove away, a key turned quietly in the lock of their house. It was Donnie's mother who came in. Finding the house extremely neglected, she hired a cleaning company. In the midst of the general cleaning, Violetta, Donnie's wife, woke up. What's going on here? She asked grudgingly. There's a cleanup going on here, honey, which was perfect before you moved here. Not only have you abandoned the house, but you don't even look after my son. Why did you marry him in the first place? I'm married by calculation, just as he didn't marry us. Our dads made a deal. Don't you know? I don't give a damn about your son. God, he had such a nice girl, and I wish I had helped them reunite back then, said the mother. Is that the beggar girl? Don't be ridiculous. Who needs him? Get out of this house. And we don't need your money. I'll give my share of the inheritance to Donnie. You should have done that sooner instead of messing with people of low social responsibility. Donnie's mother lost her temper. So I'll leave. I don't want your shack. Our house is much richer and better than this barn. So Violetta left, slamming the door of the 3-story luxury barn, and Donnie's mother stayed behind with a sense of accomplishment to cook dinner for her son. The house was bright and sunny again, just as it had been before. Her happy thoughts were interrupted by a girl who was cleaning her son's office. Mistress, tell me, should I clean this bear too? He's so old, I'm afraid he'll be damaged. She handed her mother the teddy bear that Matthew had been playing with. Where did you get it from? Donnie's mom asked in shock. Sitting in the chair, the girl shrugged. It was as if the woman had been doused with cold water. It was her 6-month-old daughter's bear, which she had personally bought when she was pregnant more than a quarter of a century ago. Only it had mother-of-pearl buttons instead of eyes. And here was a tag sewn into its paw. It said Ashley Brown, and next to it was also labeled Matthew Brown. What is this? How did it get here? The woman thought feverishly. When Donnie arrived home, his mother was waiting for him, admitting that she had kicked the negligent daughter-in-law out, but she was concerned about another question. "Where did you get that toy?" And the mother showed it to her son. "And Matthew left this for me when he left." "Ashley's landlady gave it to me," my son answered, embarrassed. "Ashley," the mother interjected. "And Matthew, who's that?" "Mom, why are you freaking out?" "Ashley's the cleaning lady, my friend, who you and Daddy wouldn't let me go out with, and Dad kicked her out of town." "Matthew, her son. Did I kick my own daughter out with my own grandson, and my own father out of town with my own hands? How awful." The woman pondered aloud. "So I don't understand whose daughter to whom. That bear is my daughter, whom your father gave to his friend, practically as a hostage. So Ashley is my daughter and Paul's daughter. And I'm Kevin's son, who has now changed his name to Jeremy," Donnie said. He didn't even notice how he told his mother what he shouldn't have said. "So you know everything?" Mom asked and cried. "I've known for a week now," my son answered quietly and hugged her. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." "What are you? You're my son," she answered and stroked Donnie on the head. "And Ashley grew up in an orphanage," said Donnie and Matthew she was raising alone. "We need to find them." The next day, Violetta was sent the divorce papers. It was just a matter of finding Ashley. Her mother and Donnie hired half the detective agency for this purpose, and the results weren't long in coming. Turns out she wasn't going anywhere, but was living quietly on the outskirts of town in an old house. She was working from home as a sales manager in a furniture factory. The very next day, Donnie and his mother rang the doorbell of the one who had been hurt so badly. Matthew opened the door for them, as Ashley herself was busy having another phone conversation with a customer. "Donnie," shouted Matthew and threw himself into the guy's arms. "I missed you so much. I think it's yours." And Donnie handed the baby his teddy. Donnie's face lit up with joy, and he pressed his pet to his chest. "Why is that woman crying?" Matthew asked, pointing to Donnie's mother. "Because it's your grandmother who's been looking for you for a very long time." "Wow. Do I have a grandmother?" "What's your name?" "Call me Grandma Priscilla," the woman answered through her tears and hugged the baby tightly. As the guests entered the room, Ashley got up from the table. She was very surprised to see them. It was obvious that she was deeply pregnant and that she was only days away from giving birth. "Ashley, I'm sorry. I've been looking for you for so long. And this is your mom. And she's also my mom. Can you imagine? But don't worry, she's not my birth mother, so the baby won't get hurt. I take it this is our baby, right?" And Donnie gave his sweetheart a gentle hug. "Daughter, I'm doubly sorry too. First for giving you up to strangers, obeying your husband, and for not giving you and Donnie a life." Ashley covered her face with her hands and cried. She was happy. In one day, she had found her fiancé and her mother. Half an hour later, Donnie's car was carrying the most precious cargo in the world, her beloved family. In the morning, Violetta was informed of the event. By that time, she had already signed the divorce papers, and there was no turning back. "How dare he replace me with some wench?" Violetta fretted. "But you will dance with me," and the happy family walked in the park and discussed the wedding day. It had to be done quickly, since the baby would be born soon. "Matthew, let's go home." Ashley called loudly, but the boy was nowhere to be found. Interviews with passers-by revealed that a tall, red-haired young woman had taken him, and Donnie guessed that Violetta was involved in Matthew's disappearance. He realized that a search on his own would not yield anything, and the police intervened, where the parents immediately reported the case. The search dog quickly picked up the trail. He ran for a long time along the park, and then turned into the woods. The investigators and Donnie somehow kept up with him, and there was a cabin in the woods from which they could hear the tearful crying of a child. Fear for Matthew made Donnie's heart ache. He was the first to rush into the house. Matthew was sitting on the bench, bound hand and foot, and Violetta was hiding behind the stove, who had heard the dog barking and people screaming. When they took her away, she looked mad. her disheveled hair and burning eyes telling of the young woman's frustration. Matthew was fine. He quickly calmed down and ran up to Donnie. "Daddy!" shouted Babe and hugged the man. In surprise, Donnie froze. He was happy. 3 days later, they had a modest wedding, with only the closest people present. Donnie's real father was also invited, who apologized to everyone and was forgiven for such a day. Donnie adopted Matthew, and 3 more days later, Donnie and Ashley had a daughter. Matthew was the happiest of all, walking around with a proud look on his face and saying that he was now a big brother. When the whole family gathered at the cradle of the newborn, the baby girl smiled for the first time, and that smile shed a soft light into people's souls, displacing resentment and grief. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel, like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.